Hey, let me show you how I built this table that separates the first, middle, and last name, keeping in mind there's not always going to be a middle name. If this is the type of thing that can help you out, stick around. I'll show you how I did it. Just a heads up, before we go any further, as of this recording, the text functions I use in this video are only available in Excel 365 and 2021, but maybe this can still be of help. Stick around and check it out. Alrighty, to capture the first name, I used the TEXTBEFORE function. I use two arguments. The first is the text we want to split. Here I'm referencing cell D3. The second argument is the delimiter, which in this example is the space between names. Alright, let's move on to the middle name. I have the formula up here that I use to capture the middle name, keeping in mind that sometimes we have a middle name, sometimes we don't have a middle name. There's a few steps to this formula, but don't worry, I'm going to break it down. It's pretty straightforward, right? So let's start with, I'm going to delete everything here. Let's start with the first function that I use, and that is the TEXTSPLIT function, right? So in this case here, the way the TEXTSPLIT function works is I'm going to give it the text I want to split. In this case here, it's going to be the name in cell D3. And what will my delimiter be? It's going to be the empty spaces between the names. I'm going to hit enter, and you can see it breaks Kevin Lee Smith into 3 different columns. Alright, so next is the COUNTA function. I'm going to type in equals COUNTA, and COUNTA is going to count how many values there are within an array. So here I have my array of the value in cell D3, which is the name. I'm going to close that out, and it returns a value of 3. So it looked at this array and it returned a value of 3. Now let's just go, and I'm going to clear everything out here, and let's just retype this in the proper column now. In column F, I'm going to type in equals COUNTA, and instead of selecting an array, I'm going to put the TEXTSPLIT function in there. And I'm just going to use the exact same arguments as before. We're going to select D3 as the text, and I'm going to put in a space as the delimiter. Let's close out the TEXTSPLIT. I'm going to close out COUNTA, and instead of splitting out the name, now it gives me a value of 3. Now let's replace COUNTA with the index function. So we know that TEXTSPLIT is creating an array with 3 separate names. Now what I'm going to do is put this between the index function. So the index function, first argument is what is the array we want to search. Well, in this case here, it's the array created by the TEXTSPLIT function. The second argument is the address, right? So what is the address within the array that we want to look up and return a value from? Right, so in this case here, we have an array that was created by TEXTSPLIT. It created 3 different columns, right? 1 for each name within Kevin Lee Smith. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to specify the address of the middle name, which in this case here would be 2. So I'm going to hit the number 2, and I'm going to close out the index function. And now instead of getting a number, I'm going to get Lee. And there we go. That is how the index function is working in this formula. Final step, I put everything into an if statement, right? So our first argument, the logical test, I'm counting how many names are within the array. If there are more than 2 names, then what we're going to do is move on to the second argument, which value if true. I use the index function to capture the middle name. If there's only 2 names, then the value is false, and I just leave it blank. And that's my formula for the middle name. And then you can just drag it down. Special shout out to the sponsor of today's video, Kevin Lee Smith of Kevin Lee Smith Refrigeration. Nah, I'm just messing with you. There's no sponsor. Let's move on to the last name. Alright, so still working with our buddy here, Kevin Lee Smith. I'm going to introduce a new function here, and that is the TEXTAFTER function, right? So equals TEXTAFTER. Works very similar to the TEXTBEFORE and TEXTSPLIT. So we're looking for the text that we want to manipulate here. In this case here, like I said, our good buddy Kevin Lee Smith, and the delimiter is going to be, as always, the empty space between each name. This is where it gets interesting. I can give it an instance number, right? So watch what happens if I give it an instance of 1. It's going to return Lee Smith. If I give it an instance of 2, it's going to give me just Smith, right? So by setting the instance number, I can choose where I want to split the name. All right, and here is the entire formula. I put it in between an if statement. For my logical test, I use the exact same technique. I created an array using the TEXTSPLIT function, and I count how many values are in that array, right? And if the value is true, I use the TEXTAFTER function, and I start counting after the second space in the name. If the value is false, then we just want to use the value after the first space, right? And then you just hit enter, and I can drag that down. When I make these videos, it's tough to create a one-size-fits-all kind of solution, but hopefully the techniques and the functions that I presented in this video help you come up with your own custom solution if your information is laid out a little bit differently, right? If you're still here and this helped you out, hey, maybe consider giving me a like and subscribing. All right, thanks and have a good one.